April 1st, 2020. Across Europe, 60,000 criminals tap their phones and download what they think is a routine security update. They're encrypting their messages, protecting their drug shipments, their murder contracts, their torture chambers. But the update isn't from EncroChat, the encrypted phone company they trust with their lives. It's from French cyber police. Every device just became a confession machine. Elite cybercrime units against the entire underworld. For the next 73 days, investigators will read everything. Murder plots unfolding in real time, kidnapping countdowns, a man ordering a victim tortured with a dog shock collar, another betrayed by his love of Stilton cheese. The criminals have no idea that police are sitting at their digital table, watching 115 million messages pour in. What they also don't know, 200 people are marked for death. Officers can't warn them without blowing the operation. How long can they wait before stopping the killing? And what happens when the criminals realize they've been installing their own downfall? Between 2017 and 2020, a digital fortress operates in plain sight across Europe. EncroChat isn't your ordinary phone company. Their modified Android phones sell for $1,000 to $1,500. The subscription costs $1,500 for a 6-month contract, and you can't just order one online. The transaction itself looks like a drug deal, because that's exactly what most buyers are using them for. 60,000 users. Drug kingpins, hitmen, arms dealers, the iconic untouchables of the criminal underworld. These aren't ordinary smartphones. No GPS tracking, military-grade encryption on every message, a panic button that can wipe the entire device in seconds. But here's the insane part. The phones even have a second operating system. If police seize one and force you to unlock it, you give them the dummy password. It opens a clean, empty phone. Your real criminal communications stay hidden. The criminal marketplace is thriving. Murder contracts negotiated like business deals. Torture sessions planned with meticulous detail. 103 tons of cocaine moving through European ports. Weapon shipments crossing borders. Money laundering operations processing hundreds of millions. They believe they're invisible, untouchable, operating in a digital space that law enforcement can never penetrate. They're wrong. But what nobody expects, the encryption isn't the weakness. The phones themselves are about to become the trap. In 2017, French Gendarmerie cyber investigators stumble onto something, a digital fortress that seems impenetrable. Server locations, communication patterns, an entire criminal ecosystem operating on a platform they've barely heard of. What they discover will take 3 years to exploit. 3 years that will change the rules of criminal investigation forever. But they hadn't seen anything yet. The elite cyber unit of the French Gendarmerie spends years studying EncroChat, not trying to crack it, not attempting to break the encryption, just watching, learning, mapping the network structure, understanding how criminals use it, identifying the servers that make it all possible. They realize something crucial. You can't break military-grade encryption, not in real time, not when you need admissible evidence for court. The mathematics simply don't work. But here's where it gets interesting. They don't need to break the encryption. January 2020, a judge in Lille, France, signs an authorization that has never been attempted at this scale. Not to intercept encrypted messages, not to decrypt communications, but to hack the phones themselves. The technical challenge is staggering. They need malware that can read messages before encryption, that can capture lock screen passwords, that can photograph everything on the screen, that can operate completely invisibly, leaving no trace. And they need every criminal to voluntarily install it. Think about that. 60,000 of the most security-conscious criminals in Europe, people who trust no one, who assume every law enforcement agency in the world wants them caught, who pay $1,500 per year specifically for the promise that their communications are unbreachable. The French cyber team spends months developing the perfect Trojan, testing it, ensuring it will be invisible, making absolutely certain that when it deploys, not a single criminal will suspect a thing. But the ethical question is already forming in investigators' minds. How much crime do you watch before you act? If you can read murder plots in real time, how long do you wait before stopping them? Every day you watch means more evidence, more arrests, entire criminal networks mapped and ready to dismantle. But every day you watch also means someone might die. What they don't know yet, that calculation will haunt them for 73 days straight. The malware is ready, the legal authorization signed, but they need one thing. Every criminal has to voluntarily install their own surveillance. How do you trick 60,000 paranoid criminals into downloading a police Trojan? The answer will come on the perfect day for deception, and that's when everything changed. April 1st, 2020. The date is almost too perfect, too on the nose. It exploited a fundamental human truth. The more paranoid you are, the more eagerly you install security updates. Across Europe, 60,000 EncroChat phones receive a notification, a routine security update, new encryption protocols, enhanced protection, the kind of update that security-conscious criminals would never ignore. The irony is beautiful. The more paranoid the criminal, the faster they install it. The drug kingpins who paid premium prices for unbreakable security are the first to tap install. The hitmen who trust their lives to this encryption eagerly download what they think is even better protection. They aren't just installing an update, they're installing their own downfall. Within hours, messages begin flowing to French and Dutch police servers. Not encrypted messages they'd have to crack. Not scrambled communications requiring years of computational power. The actual messages, before encryption, readable in real time. It worked. At Europol headquarters in The Hague, Operational Task Force EMMA comes online. French Gendarmerie, Dutch National Police, Britain's National Crime Agency. Agencies across Europe coordinating in real time as the messages flood in 115 million messages over the next 73 days. But here's what they aren't prepared for. They aren't just reading criminal business transactions. They're watching torture, murder, kidnapping, evil discussed with the casualness of ordering takeout. The first 48 hours reveal the true horror. One criminal orders his associate to shock a kidnapping victim with a dog training collar. More violently, he writes, as casually as you'd ask someone to turn up the volume. Investigators watch the messages come through, real time, knowing someone is being tortured at that exact moment. Murder contracts negotiated like pizza delivery. Can you do it by Thursday? What's the rate for 2 targets? Make it look like an accident. Over 500 National Crime Agency officers in the UK alone, working shifts around the clock, reading horror, watching evil unfold on their screens, sitting at the digital table of the most violent criminals in Europe. Unbeknownst to the criminals, every word they type is being read by dozens of investigators across multiple countries. One case still haunts the investigators. A sophisticated money launderer, careful about every digital trace, never uses his real name, never mentions specific locations, practically invisible. But he makes one mistake. He loves Stilton cheese, and he has a favorite supplier. His EncroChat messages mention a very specific order being delivered to a very specific address. That's all they need. The seizures start piling up. 103.5 tons of cocaine, 163.4 tons of cannabis, 923 weapons. But those numbers can't capture what investigators are actually witnessing. Torture chambers discussed in detail, kidnappings planned with countdown timers, victims selected, methods debated. Then they discover something that makes the nightmare worse. 200 people in the UK alone are marked for death. Officers know their names, know the contracts on their lives, know when and sometimes how they'll be killed. But here's the nightmare scenario nobody expected. Any intervention blows the operation. Warn one person and word spreads. Arrest one hitman and 60,000 other criminals realize something's wrong. They destroy their phones, delete their messages, disappear. Every day, the same impossible calculation. One more day of surveillance means dozens more arrests, entire drug networks mapped, corruption exposed, criminal empires ready to fall. One more day also means someone might die. The investigators watching murder plots unfold can't immediately stop them. They have to work in the shadows, covert operations, finding ways to save lives without revealing the source of their intelligence. May 2020. While criminals continue their business as usual, police begin surgical strikes on the most urgent threats. The 200 people marked for murder get discreet protection. Some don't even know they're being guarded. Others get arrested on unrelated charges. Better a short jail sentence than a bullet. Police create elaborate cover stories for each intervention. Traffic stops that discover weapons. Anonymous tips that lead to raids. Anything to explain the arrest without mentioning EncroChat. Some criminals start getting paranoid. Their associates arrested at convenient times. Shipments intercepted at exactly the wrong moment. Meetings raided just as they begin. Do you think they're listening? One message reads. Impossible, comes the reply. This is EncroChat. What they couldn't see. Investigators are reading that exact conversation in real time, watching paranoia spread while criminals continue using the same compromised devices to discuss whether their devices are compromised. The coordination is staggering. French police working with Dutch investigators, working with British agencies, working with German prosecutors. 6,500 arrests being prepared across multiple countries. Evidence being compiled, warrants being drafted, raid teams getting assembled. But here's what makes it harder. The corruption goes deeper than anyone expected. Intelligence analyst Natalie Mottram, employed by Cheshire Constabulary and seconded to the Northwest Regional Organized Crime Unit, has access to intelligence databases. She's searching for information about Operation Venetic, the UK's code name for the EncroChat investigation, trying to warn her criminal contacts. She isn't alone. Other corrupt officers discovered, some warning criminals, some deleting evidence. The operation designed to catch criminals is also catching the police who protect them. But that's not the scary part. The net is tightening, raid teams ready, evidence overwhelming. The largest coordinated law enforcement operation in European history prepared to launch. But 73 days into the operation, someone on the EncroChat side notices something. Server anomalies, unusual data patterns, traffic that doesn't match normal usage. On June 13, 2020, the message every criminal dreaded appears on their secure phones. What happened next would shock everyone. Today we had our domain seized illegally by government entities. They have access to our entire server database. You are advised to power off and physically dispose your device immediately. Panic. 60,000 criminals reading the same message at the same moment. The fortress just collapsed. Their impenetrable communications exposed. 3 months of messages, murders, torture, drug deals, corruption, all in police hands. Phones get destroyed, smashed with hammers, burned, thrown in rivers. Criminals frantically trying to erase evidence that doesn't exist on their phones anymore. Here's what they don't understand. It's already been copied, stored, analyzed, every message from the past 73 days. Across Europe, doors explode open simultaneously. Coordinated raids in the UK, France, Netherlands, Germany, Sweden, Norway. At 6 a.m., heavily armed teams hit addresses in synchronized strikes. The criminals they've been watching for 73 days. The torture planners, the hitmen, the drug lords, the iconic untouchables in handcuffs. Their entire operations exposed. Not from informants they could intimidate, not from confessions they could recant. From their own words, their own messages, their own detailed planning sessions. The emergency warning that should have saved them only accelerates their capture. Because destroying the phone doesn't matter. Police already have everything, but what they find during the raids goes beyond what they'd read in the messages. Here's the thing nobody expects. The final numbers are staggering. 6,500 arrests worldwide, 2,600 in the UK alone, 1,384 criminal charges, not estimates. Actual prosecutions with evidence so overwhelming that defense attorneys have almost nothing to argue. 103.5 tons of cocaine seized, 163.4 tons of cannabis, 923 weapons including military-grade assault rifles and explosives, 40 airplanes purchased with drug money, 271 estates and homes, nearly $900 million in total assets. But here's the scary part. The physical evidence tells stories the messages only hinted at. Torture chambers found in warehouses, the exact locations discussed in EncroChat messages, rooms fitted with chains, soundproofing, the instruments of violence that criminals had casually discussed installing, weapons caches with enough firepower to outfit small armies, money-counting rooms processing millions in cash, hidden compartments in vehicles matching the exact modifications criminals had bragged about in their messages. The 200 gangland killings prevented, lives saved because investigators endured 73 days of watching horror to stop it. EncroChat itself shuts down, some operators arrested, but the company's leadership, including the Canadian CEO, remains at large. The servers dismantled, the company dissolved. But somewhere, someone walks away with the knowledge of who every user was. It seems like a complete victory. The criminals caught, the evidence overwhelming, entire criminal networks dismantled. But in courtrooms across Europe, defense lawyers are preparing a challenge that will shake the entire operation. What they don't know yet, the legal battle will last longer than the investigation itself. And that's when everything changed. The arrests are spectacular, the evidence overwhelming, the operational success undeniable. But here's the question that haunts courtrooms. Was it legal? Defense lawyers across Europe mount the same challenge. French police hacked phones, not intercepted communications, not gathered evidence through traditional warrants. They installed malware on devices and read private messages in real time. Even if those messages discussed murder, torture, and drug trafficking, did police have the right to do that? The privacy argument seems absurd at first. These aren't innocent citizens. They're criminals using encrypted phones specifically to avoid detection. But here's the thing the courts have to consider. The law doesn't work that way. Rights apply to everyone, or they apply to no one. French prosecutor Carole Etienne defends the operation. The judge in Lille authorized it in January 2020. Every legal requirement met. The operation targeted a platform being used almost exclusively for serious criminal activity. The intrusion was proportional to the threat. Dutch prosecutors make similar arguments. This wasn't mass surveillance of ordinary citizens. This was targeted investigation of a criminal communication network. But here's what makes defense lawyers nervous about the precedent. If police can hack 60,000 phones to catch criminals, what stops them from hacking 60 million phones to catch everyone? Some convictions get challenged, a few overturned on procedural grounds. Not because the defendants aren't guilty, the evidence makes that clear, but because the method of gathering evidence pushes boundaries that make courts uncomfortable. 3 years later, in 2024, legal battles continue in multiple jurisdictions. Most convictions stand. The overwhelming evidence of violent crime makes it difficult for courts to dismiss. But the questions remain unanswered. The operation saved 200 lives, seized $900 million, arrested 6,500 criminals. But it also set a precedent about surveillance power that we're still grappling with. The criminal world adapts quickly. Within months of EncroChat's collapse, new encrypted services appear. Sky ECC, Anom, each promising the same unbreakable security that EncroChat claimed. Some learn from EncroChat's mistakes. Others walk right into the same trap. Anom turns out to be an FBI operation from the start. Criminals using it think they're protected. They're actually sending messages directly to law enforcement. The cat and mouse game continues. Criminals developing more sophisticated encryption. Police developing more sophisticated hacking tools. each side learning from the last engagement, each side preparing for the next. Some EncroChat operators remain at large, identity unknown, location uncertain. The people who built the platform that facilitated 103 tons of cocaine trafficking and 200 planned murders. They're out there somewhere, probably building the next version. The investigators who sat at that digital table for 73 days carry the weight of what they witnessed. Torture discussed casually. Murder negotiated like business. The casual evil of people who thought no one was watching. But they also know they saved 200 lives, prevented kidnappings, stopped torture, dismantled criminal empires that had operated with impunity for years. The 200 people who lived because police read messages about their murders, most don't even know how close they came. Some were warned, others were protected without their knowledge. All of them alive because investigators endured 73 days of surveillance before acting. But here's the thing nobody expects. The fundamental question remains. In a world where encryption protects both privacy and crime, where is the line? What surveillance is acceptable to stop murder? What privacy must we protect even for criminals? The next operation is probably already underway, on both sides. April 1st, 2020 wasn't just an April Fool's Day prank. It was the day 60,000 criminals learned that no encryption can protect you if you're voluntarily carrying the bug. They trusted their technology. They installed every update. They followed every security protocol. And that's exactly what got them caught. The next generation of criminals is watching, learning, adapting, using different platforms, different techniques, different operational security. They know EncroChat fell. They know Anom was compromised. They're trying to avoid the same mistakes. But here's the thing. The investigators are watching too, learning, adapting, developing new techniques, new hacks, new ways to turn the criminals' own security against them. The question isn't whether this will happen again. It's whether it's already happening, and nobody knows it yet.